Tanse Sego Anibuju, Quainin Deluisi Pam Palmater, and I am the host of this show, The Warrior Life. This podcast is a show about living the warrior life, a lifestyle that focuses on decolonizing our minds, bodies, and spirits, while at the same time revitalizing our cultures, traditions, and practices. It's also about asserting, living, and defending our sovereignty all over Turtle Island. Today's episode is a follow-up from our previous conversations with Skyler Williams, the spokesperson for 1492 Land Back Lane. Haudenosaunee people have continued to occupy the Mackenzie Meadows housing development, which has been renamed 1492 Land Back Lane, for over 98 days now. The land reclamation camp has been peaceful, and the people on the ground have engaged in community feasts, games of lacrosse, and events like music concerts put on by supporters like Haudenosaunee musician and two-time Juno Award winner Derek Miller. And in case any of you have missed that podcast interview with Derek Miller and why he supports the Land Defenders, I'll post links to it in the description box below. The Land Defenders have engaged in media conferences and social media to help educate the public on the issues that are at stake with their peaceful land defense. Despite their peaceful occupation, the Haldimand County Police Services Board have referred to the land defenders as terrorists and called on the OPP to arrest them. While this sort of vilification of Native land defenders is nothing new, it shows the deeply rooted racism and hatred towards our peoples that continue today. I think it should also be kept in mind that the Toronto Star recently exposed Haldimand Mayor Ken Hewitt as having a major conflict of interest in this issue. Hewitt admitted to having a financial interest in the housing development at Mackenzie Meadows, having put a deposit down on one of the units to be built. In Wet'suwet'en territory, heavily armed RCMP have removed peaceful land defenders from their homes despite their own conflict of interest. You'll recall that the RCMP pensions are invested in TC Energy, the parent company of none other than Coastal GasLink Pipelines. Here, the Haldimand mayor is advocating for the forced removal of Haudenosaunee peoples from their own lands so that the developer can continue to build the house that Hewitt put a down payment on. The continued dispossession of Indigenous peoples has always been about taking our lands and resources for the economic benefit of settlers and governments. At this point, we all know that the developer could easily be compensated by federal, provincial, and municipal governments for authorizing the sale and development of lands that rightly belong to Six Nations. However, Six Nations could never be properly compensated once those lands are developed into homes and people live there. The whole idea is to address land rights before they are irrevocably transferred, developed, or destroyed. Despite these glaring injustices and the land defenders' peaceful attempts to negotiate, they have been faced with mocking, aggression, and violent responses from the OPP. At this point in time, the OPP have arrested at least 33 people, and the land defenders are quite sure that the OPP have more arrest warrants to issue. This is all in addition to the local court first issuing an interim injunction against the Haudenosaunee from occupying 1492 Land Back Lane without providing legal representation for Skyler Williams or even allowing him to present a full defense or raise these critical land issues. The court then granted a permanent injunction this week, again without legal representation for Skyler or allowing him to defend himself. As the spokesperson for 1492 Land Back Lane, I asked Skyler if he could come back on the podcast and give us an update on all of this recent OPP violence and what's happening in the courts. We started our podcast interview, but were interrupted by the nighttime arrival of the OPP. This is the lived reality on the ground for the people there and the constant threats, arrests, intimidation, and violence from the OPP. But I thought it was important to play the part of the interview that we were able to do before he was interrupted by the police. And I also think it's critical to continue to support land defenders there and all over Turtle Island as we continue to have to deal with the failure to implement any of our rights or respect our land rights. It's a way of protecting them, at least in part, by ensuring that we have eyes and ears on what's happening on the ground and that the public knows exactly what's happening. So here is the interview that we were able to do. Here to give us an update on what's happening both with the recent court decision and also the recent OPP violence against land defenders is Skyler Williams. Welcome back to the show, Skyler, but I'm sorry to be welcoming you back because it looks like very little has improved.
Well, you know what, after hard to believe that it was yesterday at this moment, the court action to see Haudenosaunee rights permanently extinguished over our traditional territory for us here at Land Back Lane, but and the OPP's response to that was shooting rubber bullets and trying to arrest one of the guys coming out of the camp. And one guy got tasered, another guy shot in the leg with the rubber bullet. It's been a tumultuous couple of days here since the ending of that court.
So the last time we talked to you, the court had issued an interim injunction, and they, even at that point, they didn't give you the full ability to speak and give a full defense and raise all of these issues. Now I understand that this second court case, for people who don't know, actually issued a permanent injunction, and this time you still didn't have the ability to present a fulsome defense or raise any of the issues around the land. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely, it's true. And I mean, at the end of that, his ruling was to disqualify me from the proceedings, as well as to make a finding, a ruling to grant the permanent injunction to the developer who was the one applying for this. And so this is where we're at today, is trying to we're going to be appealing that, of course, and hopefully have more luck with the higher court. Not that the folks here are very optimistic about that. I think our track record kind of going through the court processes has been we've got a poor record when bringing our case before the courts.
Well, especially the fact that you haven't been afforded a fair opportunity to defend yourself or raise any of those issues. And it really begs the question about, how can Indigenous peoples access justice? I mean, it was bad enough that there isn't funding there for you to have a lawyer to be represented, but then to not even be able to represent yourself seems the height of racism in Canada's justice system.
And I think we tried to bring all of that kind of stuff to light, arguing that whenever the liberties of Indigenous people are brought to justice, certainly in the criminal context and very lightly in the civil context, that the principles around Gladue be applied. And we tried to argue that certainly that those prejudices are no more glaring, because that's what Gladue speaks about, is that the bias and the prejudice and the over-incarceration of Indigenous people and the estrangement from the system is what Gladue talks about. And I think there's no more glaring example of that than when we talk about land rights and land claims issues in this country.
Well, and of course, we all know from the Ipperwash inquiry that all of this racism in the OPP especially was something that was a key focus of the Ipperwash inquiry. And for those people who don't remember what it is, that was when the OPP shot and killed unarmed, peaceful land defender Dudley George, when people were peacefully occupying their lands that should have been given back to them a long time ago. And I think one of the most important findings from the Ipperwash inquiry then was they dispelled the whole myth that there's only a few bad apples in the OPP, that in fact, anti-native racism is widespread in the OPP appear to be living up to their names, because what you had was peaceful land occupation, feasts, music, concerts, lacrosse, a small, smallish number of people. And then the OPP go in and they bring the violence and they bring the potential harm to people. And it seems like time and again, the OPP resort to violence and escalation instead of all the parties sitting down at the table and working it out.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that certainly for not just Six Nations, but across the country, need to understand that when we make a stand, regardless of whether that stand is for hunting and fishing, whether that's for our land rights or our rights to clean drinking water, it doesn't matter. When we make that stand and we make that stand together, and we're able to amplify each other's voices in the way that we are right now, and right now this is across the country. We aren't going quietly through this alone. No. As one community or another. We are banding together in ways that certainly the country and the provinces that we live in are don't have any choice but to hear anymore. Because when we stand on these, whether it's on the roads or in the bush, or we are able to amplify each other's voices to such a degree that there's no ear that we can't reach.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because even when we're in our most vulnerable moments, the arrests and the violence coming from the OPP, you and the people in your camp are still on social media and reaching out and supporting us, the Mi'kmaq in Mi'kmaqi, and you're supporting the Wet'suwet'en and the Secwepemc and all of us facing these issues. Usually they roll out, one at a time, but right now it seems to be full force. But even in those moments of vulnerability, we're all supporting one another. And I think that's a real positive that you're raising, that we should take from that. We should never be defeated by what a court says or what the cops do. We know what they're going to say and do, but it's how we respond and how we are move together to support one another. And that's why I'm glad you take so much time here, because you're also supporting all of us with our own issues.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what we need to do is every time, and not just some of the time, but every time that there's any of these issues going on across the country. I know we did that here in Six Nations when they were raiding in Wet'suwet'en and Tyendinaga. When they were raiding there, we took the Highway 6 barricade and held that for several weeks. And so like this is something when these police forces in whatever province or territory they're in want to enforce this crime and punishment approach to dealing with land claims. It's something for us as communities to be able to make sure that everybody understands that nobody's standing alone in this, and that us our Ungwahome voices aren't gonna be quieted anymore simply by pointing a gun in our direction or threatening us with jails. In this particular instance, it's heavy court costs and claims for damage, irreparable harm as they call it.
Yes, I saw something in the media saying land defender Skyler Williams may be on the hook for $20 million. And I was thinking, why don't you make it $1 trillion? Because you're not going to get $20 million from Skyler Williams. And even if that debt was owed in some bizarre twist of fate, Canada owes trillions just to the Haudenosaunee, so they can just take it off the tab maybe.
This was my thought exactly, and I kind of laughed at the number as well and said, well, you can't get blood from a stone. And so, where the liability lies, and we did this by adding a party to the civil proceeding against me, is saying that, the people that are liable for this is the Crown. Mm-hmm. And certainly the Crown by right of Ontario, and most certainly with the federal government. And saying that, not only are they the ones responsible for this, but you might actually get the money from them. Yeah. And so, you know what, if there's anybody that needs to be sued in this, that's them. And so if they are not like enshrining a mechanism to seek meaningful consultation and accommodation happen, if they're not giving the opportunity for developers such as this that are concerned about land claims issues arising over their developments, then for them as the developer can actually say, like, honestly, that they're, you know, an innocent third party in all of this. And for the most part, you know what, I do agree with that yes, they acted in bad faith, and of course they knew. But at the same time, the Haldimand County is the one that gave them the permit and made the bylaw changes in order for them to move that development forward, and were assured by Haldimand County that this was not going to happen. And so if this is the case, then, you know what, maybe they can get thrown into the mix as well. And so if this is where the permitting process happens, you know what, those are the people that need to pay the damages.
Well, exactly. All of this could be avoided. Like, all of this is so unnecessary because, as we talked about before, every level of government knows the Six Nations owns the Haldimand Tract. Every level of government knows that there are multiple claims by Six Nations for multiple pieces. And this could easily have been avoided by just having a moratorium on land development or land disposition until all of those claims and issues are resolved in a good faith manner. But they choose to go ahead anyway, and then they're surprised by the results.
And I think this is something that, you know, we've been saying is around that moratorium, is both the Band Council and the Confederacy both have issued these moratoriums on massive developments up and down the tract. And so, and that is most certainly those moratoriums are even more strictly said on the kind of the 6 miles around the reserve, the existing reserve, not up and down the tract, because, you know what, up and down the tract, our community isn't looking to divide that much. We are looking to be able to grow and thrive close to our reserve. And so we're saying that anywhere that is very near to the reserve, that no development should be going on without our, at least our adequate consultation with not just one part of our community, but the entirety of it. Yeah, and so Band Council is not the be-all and end-all for governance for our community. And so for us to be able to say there needs to be adequate consultation means that you have to come to our community and have those real conversations with everybody and have everybody say as to whether or not we agree or disagree with it.
Exactly, because the people ultimately are the government. Whoever the spokespeople are, or whatever forms, you know, the official governments take, like, ultimately it's the people who are the ones that say yes or no.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And I think that's where, you know, a lot of people get kind of lost in all of this, is that, you know, like, and I keep saying it, is that I'm not the leader here.
Yes.
Like, we are the only thing that I've ever gotten asked to do in any of this was to be the spokesperson for it, to do media stuff and to liaise with the police. And so that has been the height of my obligation to any of this, and none of this was to be a leader of any kind.
Yeah, regardless of whether or not the court appoints you as the leader or not, they clearly don't know how it works in Haudenosaunee territory.
Absolutely, and I think that's, you know, kind of funny that you say that you know, the court appointing the leader or whatever, as this is just not how Haudenosaunee people work. And so we are doing our best to make sure that we strive along in whatever way we can.
We saw your call on social media that went out last night when the OPP were in full-blown attack mode. We saw pictures of the rubber bullets. We heard accounts of people being chased, that they were mocking the people on the ground. you made a call out for help, and I'm hoping that in all the different ways that people can help, that people responded to that call.
Yeah, no, there was no arrest made right at that moment. And so, yeah, lots and lots of people came, and in the midst of all of that, there was some damage to the roads, both on Highway 6, the railways, and Argyle Street have all have trenches across them now. The Mackenzie Road, which is right directly in front of the site at Landback Lane, also has a trench across in front of it. And so the again, the spiking up of our community by shooting and tasering and arresting people is something that is these continued acts of aggression that to spike up an already tense situation by sticking eight cops right at the doorstep of our of Landback Lane, and expecting nobody to take offense to that. Only a couple of months after raiding the site and having this same situation where rubber bullets were being fired, people were being tasered, and the young man's face was dragged along the pavement, causing permanent scarring to his face and ear and neck. Like this is what our people are dealing with right now, and I think for us as a community to make that call out for for aid is something that's needed. Certainly want to stress the fact that we're as peaceful as can be, but at the same time that our people aren't going anywhere. Like we've been here for 97 days now, and regardless of what the cops or certainly this Justice Harper and some district court judge in Cayuga, Ontario can try and settle a land claim by issuing this permanent injunction. Like, this is not something that that our people will abide.
Well, it's irreparable damage. So if you leave the area and they develop the land, then it's off the table. You can't even negotiate those lands anymore. I mean, actually getting to the land before it's developed is actually a more prudent or responsible way of doing it.
Well, I think kind of the COVID at this moment, at that particular moment, saw construction going on, but saw our community shut right down. We had barricades up around our community to help stem the flow of those COVID interactions with people, and so we limited access to our community. And so as soon as that started to wane and the barricades came down around our community, it took another month for us to feel comfortable enough with the state of the world and this pandemic that we're in. And once that was able to happen, we moved into Landback Lane, and it was not something that we came to a decision about very easily.
He's just doing an interview. Do you have to talk to somebody?
Yes, I do. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Clan mother in our community.
Okay.
Cops are lining up at the bus.
Oh.
Cops?
Yep.
Like lots or what?
How many? Okay. She doesn't know.
Okay, let's go down there. Okay,
Gotta
man.
go?
I gotta go.
Yeah, that's okay. We're supporting you. I'll post links for everyone to support you. Keep giving me updates and stay safe, okay?
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye. It was at this point that Skyler had to leave because of the arrival of the OPP. I really appreciate him taking the time to give us this update. And what I'll do is, in addition to sharing this podcast, I'll also post it on YouTube for those who prefer video. Please share this podcast and the video and all of the support links in the description boxes far and wide. With increasing OPP violence, the vilification of peaceful land defenders, and the permanent injunction, they need as much support as possible. Thank you all for tuning in to the Warrior Life podcast. Until next time, keep living a warrior life. Walalyag.